And welcome to this edition of Night Shift. Eric Lopez alongside Andrew Gluchov. Night dominant, victorious over SMU, 41-19. A dominant second half for the Knights. Blow past the Mustangs to win the American Conference opener on this unique Wednesday night. Glad you could join us. Wherever you're tuned in, whether it's on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to and like, as well as our Twitter handle as well, where you could follow us there as well to deal, and as well as on Facebook. Of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com is where you can, of course, get all of your updates for UCF news and sports and everything else. Drew, it was we wondered about this game. Obviously, finally we get to this game. First half and the second half, two completely different halves, and maybe the best half UCF's played all year. And I think my takeaway is the master, the teacher, taught the student a bit of a lesson there in that second half. What was your thoughts there of what went right for UCF in the second half?
Well, it's all about adjustments, and you take what the defense is giving you, and the defense is selling run big time. And as a result, the running game actually did not have a very good day. So you know what? You change it up. You go to the pass. And despite early struggles, there were some overthrown passes. There were times when the receivers were looking the wrong way on passes. Even the second half, they still did it. But they settled down. They found rhythm. And that's what it's all about. You know, football's a game of momentum. And they were able to make a few key passes. That one by Javon Baker to start the second half was just what opened the floodgates. I mean, we didn't realize how big until later, but that was huge. Big confidence booster for the receivers, for the quarterback. The offensive line felt good, and you need all three of those pieces clicking to have a working passing game, and they did it.
Let's look at some of the stats here. John Rice Plumlee, 20 of 29, 316 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Most of that in the second half. I thought the slant play was a play that was really simple. And again, we always talk about play calling, Drew, but a simple stuff like slants was working, and he was hitting those slants. Obviously, Baker had a big game leading-wise, receiving-wise. 6 catches, 138 yards. Ryan O'Keefe, 6 catches, 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. But I thought Plumlee hitting those slants, taking what the defense was giving him, kind of opened up the offense, gave him a rhythm, gave him some confidence, and then they were able to hit some big plays.
Well, here's the thing about slants. Slants are timing plays. You basically throwing to nobody, and your receiver has to come and get it because of how quick everything goes. So you need that time, that chemistry, and that faith in your receiver to be able to make those plays. Obviously, early in the year, there were still issues that they were working out. They finally said, you know what, let's give it a go. And it worked. And it started working. Confidence built up. Let's do it again. Boom. Do it again. Boom. And each time they did it and it worked. It just builds the confidence even more. As we know, football's a mental game, more so than a physical game. And if you get in your own head, that's where things go wrong. And they did an excellent job of being able to kind of no longer have to think, just do. And go through these basic pieces. A short slant is a very, very elementary route, but it requires a lot of precision. And they were able to just start doing it and not think about it.
We'll take your comments and questions here in the chat room on our YouTube channel as well as on Twitter as well. Let me get to some of the comments. Kyle Nash is at the game. He will hope to join us later on from the field. After the post-game pressers are done. Sir Epic chimes in with the first comment of the night. I don't want to lose T-Will.
Don't worry, we will. The question is it this year or next? It's going to happen. It's the nature of the beast. He's building himself a great resume. But remember how many years it took Rhett Lashley to become a head coach. So, I mean, he could stick around for a bit. He could get hired by a larger program. It's only a matter of time. But
what did you see? What did you see from him in the second half in particular, where basically they shut out SMU until that last drive? Because SMU gashed them in the first half, but UCF played good red zone defense, kept the game close, even where, because it felt like SMU was a play or two away from maybe opening up a lead in that first half. But what did you see from their defense, especially in the second half?
Well, they crashed down on the receivers more. They were giving them a lot of room early on, and I understand keep them in front, don't give up the big play, but there is a certain point where uh, Rice is just Rashid Rice is just absolutely fantastic, and you give him a couple of yards, he's going to catch it and get some yards afterwards. They started tightening up, they started playing tighter man, and they were able to defend passes downfield. Once UCF started to pull away, it forced SMU into more desperation mode. They start throwing the ball downfield more, and you were able to get those downfield, pass defense, stats padded. There's no face guarding in FBS, so you're good to go. And luckily, in the case of Nikolai Martinez, his head got in the way, and that actually saved from another touchdown. They did an outstanding job of breaking up passes. I haven't really fully looked at the box score on the pass breakups, but this is the best game I've seen all year on pass breakups. It's about positioning. Players that had struggled early in the year, Brandon Adams really had a strong second half. Again, same thing I mentioned about the offense, confidence booster. Once you get the negative stuff out and you start doing good things, it just builds on itself. That momentum just keeps going. And in SMU's case, it was the opposite. Things started going wrong, and they cascaded going wrong to the point where once that safety happened, it was over. It was done. And props to Malzahn and the special teams. They once again had an outstanding day and actually made really smart use of the punters, switching between Mitch McCarthy and Andrew Osteen depending on what they needed. They went with McCarthy when they wanted a leg, but they went with Osteen when they wanted precision, and it worked. It worked like a charm. You had two punts that had really good field position for UCF, really bad for SMU, directly led to that safety, which just destroyed any confidence that SMU had in which they were going to come back and just put this game away. Just absolutely outstanding. I call it's the Colton Boomer effect. Ever since he's taken over, this special teams unit has been night and day different, and it's been great. You're muted.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I was just reading some comments, but I agree with you. The special teams have been different. They're different, more confidence. You could sense them playing since Boomers was added in. Field position, I thought was key. Like there was that play where Rhett Lashley went for it on 4th and 1, and they did a short pass that was stuffed. I know UCF didn't take advantage of it, but I thought UCF that kind of flipped the field because SMU was then pinned back to your point because of punt, pinned them back. Even though SMU got a couple of first downs. The field position there throughout the second half, I thought favored UCF, and big time. And I thought they did a heck of a job on Rice, who was a great player. You look at his stats, what jumps out to me, yes, he caught 12 balls, but 122 yards, only 10 yards a pop. The longest one he had was 18. Like you said earlier, they kept stayed in front of him. And I think that was kind of, like you said, T. Will's plan is, I don't want to get beat over the head, and then hey, I dare you to beat somebody else to beat us over there. And they really couldn't. SMU couldn't do that. Even running the ball, SMU ran for 113 yards on 31 carries, but 39 of that was on that Gardner touchdown that I know you were impressed by. Other than if you take that away, SMU couldn't run the ball against UCF. UCF did a pretty good job making SMU one-dimensional and started to put a little more pressure on Mordecai, make him rush out of the pocket.
And here's another thing about that is SMU did not adjust in the second half when the run was taken away. They didn't commit as much to the pass early enough to really salvage the game. And that was the big difference. And we've criticized UCF's coaching staff for not doing this, especially against Louisville, where they adjusted and UCF was very stagnant. It was quite the opposite this time, where UCF on both offense and defense made very key adjustments. UCF basically daring SMU to have to win in the air. They played more aggressive in the second half on man coverage than they did in the first half. And, Mordecai got rattled. He took a couple of hits. He was chased out of the pocket. And there was times where he could have tucked the ball and ran. And then instead he just kind of threw it away or something to that effect. And then you have the mental aspect of the key drops that SMU had. They missed out on touchdowns on some key drops. I mean, it caused them to not be able to convert on a drive. One was a gimme touchdown. It was just so wide open that it's just womp womp moment. No whammies. Stop.
Wow, we got sound effects on Night Shift. I love it.
Oh well, I mean, send me a text message. That's the sound you'll hear. Again, football is a mental game, and once these things that go wrong start getting into your head, it's over, and it just cascaded, and then you get these really bad drops. I mean, we watched the game. We saw Kobe Hudson had one that he was outstretched, it hit him in the hands. Probably should have caught it, but I wouldn't call that a bad drop. What we saw later by SMU. That was a bad drop. I mean, that was an egregious drop. Wind sprints, suicide, quality drop. Go run the bleachers. I mean, that was as bad as it can get. And that all comes back to the mental aspect. Even Rice had a bad drop where he started to run before he secured the ball, and you can't do
that.
That
was big. That was big because SMU was up a touchdown. He looked like would have a big gain. You're right. There's some drops there that. But again, when a secondary is physical with your receivers, don't you see more receivers tend to drop the ball because they're trying to think ahead, and plus they're getting banged around. I thought UCF's one of the secondary was trying to be physical with them. Yeah, they got called for some PIs, but I'm okay with that, especially in the college game where it's only a 15-yard penalty. I wish the NFL would kind of adopt that. I thought they were physical, and I thought it kind of wore down SMU's receivers a little bit as the game went on.
Oh, absolutely. And the last one that was in the end zone that Lashley kind of lost his mind over. That was them swallowing the whistle for a bad call earlier in the same drive.
Right.
That shouldn't have been a PI. In fact, it should have been an offensive pass interference call. So I could see a little bit of a makeup call there. But I mean, with UCF being in their swan song as a member of the American, I mean, we remember 2012. Conference USA gave UCF no favors whatsoever. So I'm not expecting UCF to
wait till we go on the road. I still think that's coming. Wait till we go.
Yeah, I don't expect UCF to get any favors. Right. But you know what? Either you play hard, you play aggressive, or
I didn't think the officiating was that bad of a difference. Yeah, UCF got some calls, but you know what? I mean, like it is what it is. I didn't think it was anything.
It wasn't seismic. It definitely wasn't seismic.
I actually thought the refs did a good job letting them play for the most part. There weren't a ton of flags until the third quarter when Rini Ngolia kind of jinxed it.
Well, of course.
Our buddy Rini. There's been the refs haven't called anything. Next thing you know, flags come in. It's like,
it took it to the third quarter for SMU to be called for their first penalty.
Right.
But that's neither here nor there. There was a little bit of whistle swallowing, and let the guys play. And UCF played very tough on the man-to-man, especially when Mordecai started airing the ball out. And not only that, but they kept their focus. There were times where there was a catch made, and they were able to jar the ball loose and get the incomplete pass. I mean, it wasn't even a breakup where the ball never got to the receiver. Receivers had the ball. They had possession for 9 out of 10 milliseconds needed, and whatever, and it gets knocked out of their hands. It's such a small little thing, but it makes the biggest difference in the world. You instead of having a touchdown or in the red zone, they're now seeing third and fourth down 30, 40 yards away.
Let's get some other comments. Mike Doty, a good friend of the show. RJ Harvey needs to be RB what? I know you and Kyle hate this topic.
No. I'm a huge RJ Harvey fan. Go look up the 2021 spring game write-up of on this website, and you will. RJ Harvey is one of the first guys I talk about. I absolutely adore this guy as a running back. He is built like a wrecking ball. You
want him to get more carries?
Strong, And he's absolutely, he's the future. He is definitely the future. And there's a reason why you're seeing more and more of him, because this guy is a force of nature. But the thing is, what he does versus what Isaiah Bowser does, and I don't think people fully appreciate, even though Bowser's numbers throughout this year have not been what they were last year, I think people miss the fact that, one, he's an excellent blocker. And two, he also works as a great decoy. When he's on the field, teams commit more against the run. So that's one reason why his numbers aren't as great. They key on him. And, okay. And, let it open up the pass. But of course, you still have to run the ball. And when if the line isn't able to open up the hole, which they struggled a little bit in the first half, especially, you're seeing Bowser run more off tackle. It happened early in the third quarter when they started that first drive. He's running off tackle because there's nothing open in the middle of the field. So that's where the adjustments come from. Of, hey, we're seeing this. Why don't we change it up a little bit? They're crashing the middle of the line. We're not getting the separation we need that he can go, in between the guard and the center, or the guard and the tackle. Take it off tackle. It's not really what he does, but he made it work. And we saw a little bit of agility out of him, where he spun, was able to get a first down, and he runs the Wildcat perfectly. I mean, he understands that offense real well, scored 3 touchdowns as a result. And they were all short yardage, but still, points are points. But I want to see Harvey getting the ball more, because he's not as fast as Richardson, and he's not as powerful as Bowser. But boy, is he a good mix of the two.
How many touches you want him to get tonight for the game? He had 7 carries, 69 yards. Bowser, 15 carries, 62 yards, 3 touchdowns. Plumlee, 11 carries, 27 yards. Johnny Richardson, 3 carries, 12 yards. Do you like that ratio? How would you do the ratio?
I think the ratio was pretty good. Because the passing game was working, you didn't see Plumlee tuck the ball and run as much. I mean, he ran around the pocket more, but he was still also looking downfield. We saw him buy some time, make some throws. I like seeing Bowser with a lesser workload as a player who has had a strong injury history. You don't want to overwork him. I remember seeing on Twitter, one person's like, oh, he needs 25 carries. No, he does not need 25 carries. And I flat out said, what he needs to do is average 4 yards per carry. He averaged 4.1. So mission accomplished. My other thing is my benchmark of Plumlee as a quarterback. And yeah, it's not necessarily him. It's also, the receivers play a role in this, but the completion percentage needs to be at least 60%. He eclipsed that quite a bit, 69%.
Right.
Again, not all that was his fault. There's still some chemistry issues with his receivers. It's very obvious when they're looking at the wrong shoulder, or they're having to spin around. That's on the receiver. They're looking at the wrong place, because I watched those routes.
I thought he made better reads though in the second half, and I think Gus, again, calling a simpler game. Again, a slant. You're not complicating too many things. I think he's limited on what he can throw. There's some, because you and I were talking during the game. There were some throws in the first half he was trying to make that we were like, that's a low percentage.
Well, those are hard throws to make. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to throw from a wide receiver that's directly running away from you, and you have a very small window. And as Rini said, Plumlee does not have great touch. He really doesn't. I mean, that 2-point conversion, man, if he put any more mustard on that thing, I mean, that's that
outfielder in him. That's the outfielder in him trying to throw to home play, right?
that was some Goulden's horseradish right there. That rifled in, and points to Kobe Hudson for holding on to that thing, because it was behind him too, and he still managed to make the catch. He has to work on his touch, and because when you're trying to throw a pass like that, that's all touch. You got to get the air underneath it so that it falls into his hands. He pushed it. It went way past. That was all on him. But again, that's a very low percentage throw.
Adam D chimes in. SMU gifted us several key drops in the first half, or this game would have been entirely different. You have to address Gus and his trick plays. They could have cost us the game too. Everybody flip. What'd you think of the? I know the one that jumps out is the one to me in the third quarter after they got the turnover on downs. I don't know. Here's my only issue here, Drew. If Gus goes vanilla, people are like, "Oh, where he's too conservative," and then when he tries to do some trickery, "Oh, he's going too crazy." Like, what do we want? I don't know what we want.
Well,
Do we
no
not?
one
Right?
expected this to be a 5-yard loss. I mean, the last time it was used, it worked.
Right.
Or I think they've run it like 2 or 3 times. One time it worked. One time it was an incomplete pass. But I mean, it wasn't a 5-yard loss. No one expects that. So I mean, occasionally you got to do it. I remember, and we've talked about the emotional aspect. I mentioned it during the FAU game where the game first started. There was a lot of emotions in play because these players knew each other. Well, this is now about the coaches. There was definitely emotions in play on both sides. Malzahn may be a professional, done this a long time, but it's got to be in his head a little bit of that's my boy out there on the other side. I want to show him a little bit, and I think that played a little bit of a role, not too much. Once the trick plays didn't work, I think he kind of steered, pulled back a little bit. I mean, you had some. You had the jet sweep and stuff, but those I wouldn't call those trickeries, any trickeration at all. That's more of just a way to get the ball in Ryan O'Keefe's hands, and we saw what happened with that huge 50+ yard touchdown. It drives me nuts. It's classified as a pass, but that was essentially it's all Ryan on that one.
Yeah, if coaches tend to be aggressive with a trick play, I'm not going to be hard on it. It didn't work, but. Again, we can't be hypocritical because we're the same group that would criticize him. Oh, like I remember the Louisville games. Remember, everybody's like, why didn't he go for it on 4th down when he took the punt instead in Louisville? Like I just feel like we got to be consistent. Do you want him to be aggressive? Do you not want him to be aggressive? I didn't. If that play works, he's trying to go for the jugular. It could put it's. I didn't have as big of a problem with it. I think we're just reacting to the result, right? Isn't that a big part of it?
It's George O'Leary once said when it comes to these things, either you're the GOAT or you're the GOAT. And he meant greatest of all time or right. Either it works or it doesn't, and you're going to be judged based on the result. And I think we get caught up too much in that. It's kind of recency bias. We've seen what the team can do when things are clicking. Every game is a little bit different. We know there's consistency issues, but that's part of being a fan is having a vested interest in a program, being overreactive, and basically living and dying by how a team does. I mean, I find it kind of entertaining personally to watch it, but everyone's there for a different reason, to involve their investment in the game, and that's how it is. It's you're going to overreact. The sky is falling. UCF lost the game to Louisville. The season's over. Throw in the towel. Change the quarterback. 49 yards. The season's over. Change the quarterback. He's terrible. Blah 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 blah. Every game is different. We don't see what goes on in practice. The game plans change. We also have to remember you take what the defense gives you. If you're able to excel in one area, you stay on that. Georgia Tech, they didn't have to throw the ball after a while because it didn't matter. They just kept running it and it worked. This time, the running game wasn't working. They threw the ball a lot more. It worked. So I aside from the fact it's an odd number game, which means, Plumlee was going to throw for 300 yards. I think people just get a little overreactive when, the team changes their tactics based on what's given to them.
Right. Jeff Wiseman chimes in. T-Will could leave, but his stock will be much higher if he brings this defense to the Big 12 and has success. You buy that?
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
I think his stock is already moving up, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's hired away before UCF gets to the Big 12. It would suck because he's really good at what he does, and we've grown to love him here. But I mean, that's just part of the progression. I mean, UCF, even though they're moving to the Big 12, it's going to be a while before they start making money that they can use on coaches to try to retain talent. I mean, as you know, there's a lot of internal issues that have to be handled first with money coming in. So I pump the brakes on being able to, on trying to keep them against, a SEC school or Big Ten school that's going to, flash some green. He's a future head coach. We all know it. He's just building his resume, and he's doing an excellent job this year. This is the best defense I've seen in years at UCF since 2014, where that defense was one of the tops in the country.
You're right. It has a chance to be top 3, top 5 if it keeps doing this way. Mike Doty makes a great point, by the way, that you take away that Gardner run, SMU averages 2.5 yards a carry.
Oh,
that's fantastic job. Fantastic.
UCF's defense did a fantastic job. Struggled in the first half, was kind of trying to figure themselves out a little bit. Bend, but didn't break, despite the fact that they gave up almost 300 yards of offense in the first half. They only gave up 13 points. This is the best red zone defense in the country for a reason. They gave up, a ton, 10 points in the red zone early on. I mean, I even though it works against them in the stats, I don't count this garbage time touchdown at the very end. It was against the second unit at the game was over. But let's look at focus on the first unit stuff. And they were, when that field gets short, they really tighten up. And I think it goes back to the whole crashing on the coverage. When they give them room, look at Rice, 70 yards after catch. Most of his was running the ball after he got it. He made great spin moves. UCF missed trying to deflect passes. He was able to move the ball after that. You can't do that in the red zone. There's no room for that. So you're able to play a lot more aggressively when you have a short field, and UCF just really excels at that.
People commenting, multiple people, about they felt this was the best they've seen Bowser looked all year. What's your thoughts on how Bowser looked there? You think they said he looked like old Bowser? He had his jump. Are you buying that he looked at his best tonight versus other games?
I mean, is it the best all year? Yeah. Is it better than any game last year? No. But that's part of it is because defenses are keen on him. It's like a rookie pitcher in baseball. First few times he's out there, he's really killing it because no one has a game plan against him. Then they develop a plan against him, and he has to adjust. Teams are adjusting against when Bowser's on the field. They're crashing the line. They're putting more in the box, and they're making him have to go outside the normal his normal range, which is between the guards, and between the tackles. Give him a little bit off tackle running. That's where he got his chunk yardage when he started running off tackle plays. And I love the fact that one, he was able to do it, and two, the coaching staff recognized it and made him do it, because that makes a defense honest and have to adjust for that. Now they won't be able to crash inside quite as much because they have to respect the outside run when he's on the field. And that just opens more opportunities. It's like run to set up the pass. Well, you use the run, bring everyone in, you pass, you make them more honest, and the cycle continues. Same thing with this running inside versus outside. I think it worked out really well. I think they'll actually start to continue it where they'll use a little more off tackle running intermittently to just make the defense honest. And with the fact that Plumlee yet again can show that he can rack up yardage passing, defenses are going to have to start respecting it a little bit, because it's going to come to a point where they're going to be like, yeah, we dare you to win in the passing, and he's going to keep doing it. And you're going to have to play a more balanced defense, or else he's going to keep burning you.
All right, other comments. Well, 41 chimes in. I mean, this is as respectfully as possible. But Baker's family, let's see. They're talking about some of the atmosphere there.
Yeah, I saw that comment. I don't even want to give that credence. I'll be honest.
I wouldn't worry about too much.
I did hear the boo birds in the first half. I mean,
well, what did you think of the crowd overall? Let's talk about the crowd in general, because obviously it was a Wednesday night game. So obviously, no surprise, you saw a bit of a decline in the attendance. I saw some photos there. Didn't look? Just wasn't. I mean, it is what it is. But the way I look at it, the people that were there obviously are your diehards. They're active there. What's your thoughts on the crowd there? Obviously, UCF probably took a hit here. I'm thinking maybe a 40% drop in attendance, this game being on a Wednesday versus maybe being this upcoming Saturday instead.
Well, I think there was between 20 and 25,000 fans.
Yeah.
I think that's a very fair assessment. But yeah, you have to understand the circumstances. I'm not digging against the fans who showed up or the fans who didn't. I live over 2 hours away. I couldn't be there. I was supposed to be in the press box, and we sent Bryson Turner up there in my place. There's people like me who live a ways away who work in their schedule to be able to come and go to these games in person. This was a last minute change, because of a hurricane. They're lucky that things worked out the way they were. They wanted it on Sunday originally. It became very obvious Sunday was not a viable option, and I'm glad that the school changed things. There was things much more important than football going on, especially when you have flooding going on just outside of campus to the point where you have people on air mattresses getting evacuated. I think that when Terry Mohajir went on Twitter to talk about it, he was very upfront. I think that was a very good move on his part. I appreciated, the honesty there, and that there's a lot of moving parts in this. You have to think of what's in best terms of UCF. You have to think of what's best terms for the conference and SMU and the television partners, because this is a conference game. You get rid of it, you have an inventory problem, because the conference is contractually obligated.
I don't think that game was ever going to be gotten rid of. It was just a matter.
I don't think so either. But that's still part of the package, though. You have to think about that.
Right. I agree.
You can't just not like an out of conference game where you're you know what, let's just not do this. We'll just nix it. No harm, no foul. We'll try and make it up down the road. You can't do that with a conference game. It's a lot more difficult. And so UCF was able to work with ESPN and SMU to find a day that worked for everybody. And with both teams having weekday games next week, you don't want to give them a short week if you don't have to. And they didn't have to. And this worked perfectly for ESPN. With this Wednesday game, there's only, counting this, there's only one more week throughout the entire season that ESPN doesn't have a Tuesday or Wednesday night college football game. So it helped them. UCF actually got bumped up on the television pecking order. Saturday would have been on ESPNU, where 10 people would have watched the game. All UCF fans. The truth is, a lot more watched on ESPN too. I mean, ESPNU just their viewership numbers are just absolutely atrocious. I mean, you study this more than anyone, and you're the one who's talking about how bad ESPNU numbers are. So, in some ways, it's almost a blessing in disguise from an exposure standpoint. All the baseball was done by evening.
Yeah, it was the only sporting event going on tonight. Right. It's the only sporting event going on tonight. It'll likely be a top 2 cable show when the numbers come out on Thursday. It's going to be this and the AEW Dynamite Wrestling show. Those are probably going to be your top 2 television shows. And you're right. They probably picked up, I'll make a guess estimate, like the Georgia Tech game, for example, drew about 107,000 viewers on ESPNU.
And it was a terrible game, though.
Awful game. I think this game will probably draw somewhere around 750,000 to maybe close to 1 million, depending on, give and take. I would say that's just so you're picking up a good amount of audience.
Yeah, I actually think the fact that the game became a blowout hurts the numbers. People like close games and will tune into close games, and UCF just stepped on their throat and closed their windpipe in the second half. I mean, there was SMU was just gasping for air and not getting any. But I think that may have actually hurt the potential TV viewer numbers. But you know what? That's okay. I'll take that.
Yeah, it's a good problem. Yeah, at the end of the day,
it's a good problem.
Yeah. How do you feel about this team now? Going in, they're going to play Temple next Thursday. We got another. Are you coming to that game? Are you coming with me? Are you going to be with me next week too?
I will be at that game. I'm actually flying back from Dallas, Texas, the day before, with the anticipation of I'm going to that game. That's the space game. A Jersey nut like me is not missing the space game.
Okay, so we got Temple at home. Then they go to East Carolina. They still got to go to Memphis. How do you feel about this team 5 games in? Encouraged, discouraged? Where do you feel now after? I mean, my thing is, can we just see this team play a 4-quarter game? I think that's probably like the second half was fantastic. Can this team now put it together for multiple weeks? Is my only question. But where do you stand right now with this team?
I'll be honest. I'm not satisfied. Okay. I'm still not happy with the offensive line play. But I played offensive line. I'm overly critical there, but I think in this case we should be overly critical on the offensive line. It was part of what made the first half such a struggle, and what they had to adjust, to. But again, you take what the defense gives you, and this is a talented team, but we know there's definite areas of deficiency. It's good that the wide receivers are no longer beat up. Kobe Hudson's finally getting into a groove. He had a very slow start. He wasn't able to get on the field. That didn't help. Some bad drops, but now he's starting to kind of get into a groove. You need that confidence. Obviously, the other two big receivers, do the job already, and they do it very well. But the offensive line, I am not satisfied with, and I'm not. This game didn't encourage me on that. I expect more. I demand more, and until they put together a full game against anyone that's worth anything, I'm not going to be satisfied. And I think as fans, we love just wins and losses, but I'm biased. Okay, I'm critical on the line.
So that's the question Jim John's asking. Will UCF's second half offensive explosion carry over for the rest of the season? I think it's to be determined. Right? Like I'm not going to get sucked in because I feel like people got sucked in with the FAU game, and then we saw the struggles against Georgia Tech. I just need to see this team for a few weeks to do it consistently, and that's all. I don't think that's asking a lot.
Yeah, this team is consistently inconsistent. Yeah. They are all over the map. They haven't put two games together yet. They've been hot, they've been cold, they've been hot, they've been cold. So if you follow the track, next week is supposed to be an off week. At least it's against Temple. But I mean, they got to do more. Even if they do well against Temple, Temple is the dredges of the FBS. So I mean, I'm not looking at it as it's a blowout win. No, that's what's supposed to happen. It's more like if it's like Georgia Tech where they struggle against a team they should be running off the field, that I have a problem with. And then you need to be concerned.
Yeah, I would agree with that there. But, look, it's all good right now. I mean, you had to win this game. You win this game big. You look at the conference right now, you're going to have the tiebreaker over SMU, which is important. That could be important down the road. I mean, to me, it looks like Cincinnati, UCF, and I guess Tulane we have to throw in there. They did beat Houston.
Oh, man, Tulane, they're the little engine that could. They're surprising
UCF
everyone.
UCF goes to Tulane, and the networks announced this week that the Tulane game at Cincinnati is going to be the Black Friday game this year. So they obviously feel that could be a relevant game as well. Is that the three teams?
Are we looking up against? Right. USF is not a relevant game. I mean, USF is terrible. They may not win another game the rest of the year. They're downright awful. There's no nice way to say that. They're terrible. I remember last year the game was just absolutely atrocious to watch. I mean, it was just like it's terrible. Oh, my eyes. This is awful. I mean, it was just bad football on both sides, and UCF squeaked by. But ESPN was stuck having to broadcast that on Black Friday. That's why they made changes. It's like, we don't want to be caught, in this situation again. So they were able to flex it, and they rightfully flexed it over to Saturday where it can dissolve into an ESPN Plus game, which wouldn't surprise me if they do that.
Well, the way South Florida, they've been playing.
There's no market appeal right now. No one wants to watch that train wreck of a program. The only benefit is the fact that it's a rivalry game, but even that's not.
No, that game again. We've argued on the show and on articles that game that matchup's not a rivalry. That's been a bust. It's been a bust. Like they had that monster game in 2017, the classic that drew over 4 million. Ever since then, it's gone downhill.
Well, it never. Before that and after that, I mean that was the pinnacle, it took both teams having their best seasons ever at that point to make it happen. And while UCF had a 2018 team that in my opinion was actually a better team overall before Mackenzie Milton's injury, South Florida opened up with 7 wins and then completely wet the bed and tanked the rest of the year. I mean, it was, they went to number 2 and took a number 2. Same concept.
Jason Beatty, our buddy, is at the post game. He tweeted this out. Both quarterback John Rice Plumlee and wide receiver Ryan O'Keefe shared a story post game that UCF coach Gus Malzahn had written on a whiteboard that the second half would be theirs against SMU. Apparently, it was one of the 3 team goals on the whiteboard. Goal achieved. How about that?
It's all about how you reset yourself. They were overthinking, making mistakes. And the key is when you start thinking is when you make a mistake because your head gets in the way. These guys practice enough. There's muscle memory. They know what to do. They don't have to think about it. They just do it. And you saw that instinct kick into overdrive in that third quarter. All things, realistically, there was nothing more they could have done in that third quarter. They did everything right offensively. I mean, they could not have done a better job. They only scored 2 touchdowns. They only had 2 drives because of time of possession, but they did everything right. That kind of confidence builder makes you stop thinking and just ride the wave. And it becomes contagious. Energy is contagious. The fans feed off it. The team feeds off it. And it just goes and goes. So, again, like I said multiple times, it's a mental game. And once you get the mental aspect in check, the talent really shows.
Garrett Weiss, strength of Spear, chimed in. Horrid start as usual with the offense. We look better in the second half. Defense is special this year. I just don't trust the offense.
I don't blame anyone for not trusting the offense. They haven't put 2 games back to back together. It is what it is. I mean, the stats don't lie. We know what they're capable of. It's a combination of game planning and execution. The coaches can only game plan to a certain extent. It then becomes execution. And it's not just one person. You can't always blame John Rice Plumlee for how the offense goes. Quarterback is the scapegoat because he's the figurehead that does most of the work in the offense. But let's remember, he's not the player who has the ball the most. It's the center. He has it on every single play. But that's neither here nor there. It's the offense as a whole. It's about the chemistry. It's about synergy. And it's about, adjusting. And you know what? If your first half's flat and your second half's great because you adjust, you still win games. And that's okay. UCF doesn't need the style points. They're not trying to win over the CFP committee at this juncture. They're not even actively meeting. At this point, win the games, let things fall into place. Your goal is control what you can control, which is always win the conference.
Eric Edwards chimes in. Great team win. Even backing up the punters. A game ball for everyone except the refs. Ghost calls, hashtag sheesh. I think the coach even learned how much talent he has in different positions, and let's hope Bullard is good to go soon. Bullard, we didn't see Bullard tonight.
Yeah, I didn't see him at all. I didn't hear why he was out, just that he was. And, you saw it on the a little bit of movement in the depth charts as well. This team's in pretty good shape. I don't think Quadric Bullard is actually the most important player in the defense. I actually think it's Justin Hodges as the most important player in the defense.
Ooh, Hodges, okay.
Because he plays that tweener. And when you're playing against a team like tonight, like SMU, that originally committed to the run and then had to go straight to the pass, he's the guy that has to switch between the front 7 and the back and the defensive backfield. He's the 5th defensive back at that point, where they're running the traditional defense until they start subbing out and committing more to the pass. So he's the flex guy. And that's hard because you're the size of a defensive back. You have the mentality of a defensive back, but you have to have the tackle technique of a linebacker and be able to cover the field like that. It's not easy. And I tip my hat to him and Nikolai Martinez for being able to handle that role and handle it well. That's not an easy role to do.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Kyle Nash as we attempt to move him in here. Let's see here. They just finished up post game. We'll see if we can get him on here.
Kyle had Bryson for just a moment.
Yeah, we're trying to get both we got some technical issues here.
I hope Bryson's not standing on the field this time.
No, he's definitely not. Not sure where we're getting them right now. Yeah, we got some tech issues there. We'll see if we can get that sorted out here in the next minute or two. Maybe Kyle just doesn't want to come on because, he's been pumping up SMU all this year and Rhett Lashley, and maybe he's going to dog him. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what he does. Maybe that he's too shy. He's too shy. That and a lot of people in the comments saying how you're right.
Kyle Nash and shy just don't go together. I've known him too long for that.
This is true. So hopefully we can get him on here in a couple of minutes because we do want to wrap this up early. It is a weeknight. We all got to work, people.
Yeah, I got to work another couple days before I head over to Texas.
There we go. We got Kyle. Do you hear us, Kyle?
The power of the buffer.
Yeah, no, I got you. And listen, I am not above the law, man. I've got no problem facing whatever criticism you have, so long as it's not from Drew, because I notice how he's hiding from the fact that he picked against UCF in this game. That's adorable. But let's keep going, shall we?
I never said anything about not. I never hit about behind anything.
Sorry, what? What? Oh, okay, that's cute. Let's go. Let's do this.
All right.
I did.
Let's kind of, Kyle, give me your thoughts. You were there in person to watch this UCF dominating in the second half. What stood out to you?
I have to say, first of all, what jumps out to me, as great as the defense is, and we'll talk about that plenty, offensively, this is easily the most complete game we've seen, right? Say what you will, if you had told me going into this game that John Rice Plumlee would not only throw the ball more than 20 times, but he would be better than 67% doing it, well, I would have been very surprised to hear anybody say that. And here we are. And listen, as much as we've talked about it not being just about JRP handling business, the other aspects too, receivers catching the football, protection being what it needs to be. And I had actually asked Isaiah Bowser about protection because he's a big part of the scheme. We didn't see any of the big boys up front tonight. Might have been tired from playing a solid game. I know that protection had its moments where there was a breakdown, but I don't see how you don't make this the best game they've had protection-wise when you consider not only the opponent, but what they actually did and how much the offense was able to be versatile. And we've said on this show and in the Black and Gold Banneret podcast, bing, that the key to that versatility is seeing more pass plays, seeing more big plays, seeing more RJ Harvey on the field handling big plays starts there. And Bowser had nothing but great things to say about the guys up front. So too did John Rice Plumlee.
That's pretty good there. By the way, people are saying that we can't see. We can see you there. I can't believe people want
to. Remember, he's in the stadium, and we all know that's where signal goes to die.
Ain't that the truth? I'm just impressed. People want to see Kyle. That's the headliner there. People,
that makes one of us.
I got a haircut. I
need a haircut.
See, this is Drew talking all this trash. People don't even know who he is half the time, right, Eric?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like I'm Batman. I have multiple identities.
What? Let me ask you about the defense. Kyle, we obviously have been talking a lot about the defense. A great performance against this SMU offense. We said this could be the best offense UCF sees all year, man, and they did a heck of a job shutting down SMU, especially in that second half.
And listen, give credit to that defense. I don't know exactly what T. Will said to them, but what I can say is that both he and Gus Malzahn said to us in the media that this was going to represent potentially the biggest challenge. So it wasn't just me that said it, fellas, for the record. This could represent possibly the biggest challenge that this defense could face all year. And guys, I don't know if you noticed, but how many times these defensive backs and others, you were mentioning the night position there, Drew, were challenged in the end zone, and how many passes defended and an interception in those end zone challenges, huge. I kind of felt like, and I think you alluded to in our chat somewhere there, Eric, where this is about experienced coaching versus inexperienced coaching. Yes. I think there was some panic here from Lashley. I feel like early on they were trying to get that knockout punch to make sure that UCF was down big. And when UCF was still in the game and they had not delivered that pull away that Drew and I had both said would be a big problem if it happens, I feel like Lashley kind of panicked. I don't see a scenario where SMU going for it 5 times on 4th down made sense to me. And the defense held up, keeping them, 3 turnovers on downs. Huge element all the way there. Listen, to say the defense stepped up on all levels is an understatement. Drew, you cited the 9th position doing well. Even though it wasn't a mobile quarterback, there were still a lot of different coverages and challenges. The DB is being challenged on the back end in any game, gentlemen, where the first level of the defense up front can deliver you a safety to break the back of the opposing unit is a good night.
Yeah, and Kyle, I also commented on how good the special teams, and particularly the punting game, that's directly set up that safety. Actually using, mixing between Mitch McCarthy and Andrew Osteen, depending on what you needed, really paid off instead of just committing to one guy. I think that really paid off. And as you said, it broke the back of SMU. After that safety happened, there was no chance of them coming back.
Yeah, Drew, twice they were pinned inside the 5, correct?
Both by Osteen, who took over on those particular punts where they needed precision. And that's what he's really good at.
What did Gus Malzahn have to say that stood out to you in the postgame?
For me, I had, the first question I had asked him was about the little things getting fixed, right? He had said to us Monday, the last time that I got to talk to him, was, the most frustrating thing for this offense are the points left on the field. Say what you want about everything else, 14 points in the Louisville game is a win. He feels like that FAU should have been a bigger win than it was because they left 14 points out there. Points were left out there galore in his eyes for Georgia Tech. I don't think there's any surprises that for any offensive individual, having those opportunities either pulled off the board or completely removed from any sort of, opportunity is probably, I shouldn't say probably, it is the most frustrating thing to see, for those opportunities to just not be there, to be completely removed.
And this was one of UCF's cleanest games from that standpoint. They didn't overplay on big plays. They didn't try to be the hero. Hero ball doesn't work, and we didn't see it.
No, not at all. And matter of fact, we're back to that multiple levels of production, right? Where you have the running backs handling business. The offensive line is there. Receivers are catching the ball and getting yak. And it's funny. Let's talk about the receivers for a minute. Javon Baker and Ryan O'Keefe both taking it as a personal insult that SMU came out and manned them up. And they both had very entertaining things to say in particular. But to quote Ryan O'Keefe more directly, I had asked him, I said, Javon had mentioned that you guys take it as an insult when you get covered man-to-man. And he's like, oh, yeah, they put that little guy on me. I knew I was fitting to go. So it was a fun time for these guys when they got to take advantage. And though they wouldn't see it, there was an element of relief that it's coming together. And listen, the final point I want to make is I had actually asked Gus what it says about this team to not only come up with a big win and improve as quickly as they did, doing so with the backdrop of a literal natural disaster in the reality. Huge, man. It's one of those where you heard the tone of his voice literally change when he answered the question.
Absolutely. Going into this, it was hard to say how a team will respond in this situation. You don't know. It could galvanize the team. It could break the team, and to see them come together, step up, and really really tighten up. They won this for not only for the school, but for the whole community at large, who they needed a winner in a situation where many of them are losing. So I think maybe they felt a little bit of the weight of the community around them. But remember, UCF is pound for pound one of the best home field advantages out there. And even though it wasn't a full house, they know how to deliver energy. And I've seen them deliver energy with half the fans that they had tonight. So I'm sure that helped feed into it.
Certainly.
Well, especially Well, Eric Edwards is saying that the crowd was good and loud in important spots. The students stayed late because they offered game-worn jerseys to students? Giveaway? Really?
Really?
That's news to me.
Yeah, that's news to me, too. I don't know if I had I mean, otherwise, Drew, where was that when we were students?
I was about to say, I know Drew feels gypped.
Understatement.
Can we give that to the media?
Yeah, can I have one just to add to the collection since I have so many to begin with?
Don't you have enough of a fire hazard in your closet with that?
You shut your mouth. You shut your filthy mouth.
All right. This is like what's this like in the group chat? Was Quadric Bullard didn't play? Was he addressed in the media post game as far as what happened with Quadric?
He was not, but it's interesting. I think there's an element of what he said on Monday at the press conference, and I mentioned it a little bit in the presser preview leading up to this game. The fact that that SMU dominated the way they did last year was apparently a big deal to the players. And Coach mentioned it in passing. You know, they put up a lot of points on us last time, and it was nice to come back to it. But I you know, something I'm going to be looking to on Monday when we talk to Coach Malzahn again, I'm going to ask how much he thinks that familiarity with Lashley was helpful in preparation, and how big a deal it was in the game. And I'm not sure if he's looking to jump on, but I got Bryson here standing next to me. I don't know if he couldn't find a good perch or whether that, you know, the space mural behind me is too cool to pass up. But, you know, at some point, hopefully he'll get over being shy and maybe step into the frame. Let's see what he does here. Yeah.
Hi. The camera's too tall. The camera's too tall.
Let's see, you know, so this is the practical issues we deal with here in the field, ladies and gentlemen. Right?
There you go.
It can be worse. It can always be worse. You can have the sprinklers turn on you.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want sprinklers.
This is why we don't do walk and talks, nor do we do this on the field, gentlemen. That's right.
We've learned from that mistake.
so let me ask you this, Kyle. A couple things, because we'll keep it short, because we all have regular jobs we got to get to in the morning, and it's coming quick. How do you feel about this team now after tonight, 5 games? Are you more optimistic what you're seeing? Are you still got questions moving forward? Can this team put it together for 4 quarters? Is this the beginning of something? How do you feel now as you leave the stadium?
You know, and that's a great question, Eric. What makes this tough is we've seen a lot of the worst case scenario aspects. And I think we've seen so much of that people kind of started to accept that as fact, right? I can make an argument, though, as we have on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast, that the SMU defense, the question of whether they're better than, let's say, the Louisville defense is out there. The question of this being a tougher or toughest defense in the conference is one none of us truly agree with. I think all of us think that even though they're rebuilding compared to where they were, I think Cincinnati's defense, for example, is going to be better than this one. I think that'll be a different game, and certainly we'll talk more about that leading into it. But gentlemen, and remind me, I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but after Temple next week, who is the next opponent for UCF?
At Cincinnati, I believe. I mean, I'm sorry, East Carolina.
Okay,
East Carolina.
So one could argue that I'm not saying that East Carolina is good, and I know they have Eric's favorite American Athletic Conference quarterback, Colton Ahlers, there waiting for them. But thank you for that face, Eric. That was worth it. But I think it's a situation where I'm not going to call Temple a trap game, but ECU going into Cincinnati is.
I agree. No, and one of the things I'm going to look for when the kickoff, I believe the kickoff for that game should be announced on Monday. If that game's at night at the Boneyard in Greenville, that's a whole different complexion than, say, a noon game in Greenville, having been up there. So I actually don't disagree with you on that. I'm very curious to see what time is that kickoff at East Carolina, because if that's a night game, that could be a really tricky game in that scenario, because that atmosphere will be crazy in that matchup. Temple's a bye week. I'm not even going to reference them. I mean, they should be grateful to even still have a football program. Anyway, John Rice Plumlee, thumbs up. Encouraged after the second half. I thought the slants were working really well, Kyle. I thought Gus played a nice game, a simple game. And it's funny how, people talk about play call and all that. When you execute simple stuff, it opens up a lot.
Hey, and listen, you heard me criticize those saying that play calling was the biggest problem. And I think we've seen why I've said that, right? When it comes to, and Coach would even admit that there were some plays in Georgia Tech and other games that he wished he did have back. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's perfection. But what I will say is when you have execution like this, of course, things can only look better. And in my mind, I don't want to say that I was a John Rice Plumlee apologist or anything like that, but I was pointing out other aspects that made it a challenge. Gentlemen, I think it's hard to argue that two things occurred tonight. A, UCF's best offensive drive of the year was coming out of that first half and delivering both on the ground and in the air quickly to get that touchdown to go back up on the points. And I believe in that same drive, and you could argue which throw it was, John Rice Plumlee, regardless of what throw you and I may nitpick over which one it is, Drew, but he had his best throw of the year in this game at some point. I think that's hard to debate.
Oh, it's impossible to debate. The real debate is which one was it. I think it was
exactly
one in the first half where he threaded the needle again, leading towards the first touchdown. But also
that was a nice one.
I mean that was, if that guy turned around, he may have actually had a play on it. But that's why why we play the game. But that big play to Baker in the second half, man, in that third quarter that opened up the lead, that one was a momentum changer. One was a great pass, the other was a momentum changer and really redefined the game.
100%. Yeah, and I'm not even talking about the 51-yarder. I think not to take away from the delivery, because the delivery made that 51-yarder happen, and to watch Javon shake and bake, because his name's Baker. Okay, I'm reaching on that one, but still, I feel like the 29-yarder.
Master of the
you see what I did there? No, haters gonna hate, Drew. No, but I think it was the 29-yarder that he hit. I think that was to Hudson. Actually, might have been the sharpest pass of the game to me. But again, to your point, buddy, the biggest debate isn't if, but which. And I'm with you on that. And listen, not for nothing.
That's a good problem.
DBs were challenged more. Correct. Oh, and yeah. But to change gears on one thing, too, defensively, the front, I love how we're not talking about the defensive front anymore and how young they are and how this, that, and the other thing was. They got a damn safety. Can we stop talking? Heck, Eric's even done griping about Trayvon Moore's brash controlling the ball because he put points on the board this game, and then now it doesn't matter anymore. But what I'm going to say is this. The DBs were challenged in this game like no other, and it's absolutely amazing.
Fantastic work for them on that performance.
I got to bring this up real quick, Eric. I don't know who sent out the tweet, but Bryson, who was it that did the tweet?
Eddie Sefko.
Eddie Sefko.
Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, Eddie Sefko, Dallas Mavericks. Okay, so with that in mind, he says that on Twitter that UCF isn't a fit in the Big 12. The defense is too good. Drew, you've heard how I've talked trash on Big 12 defense. I am hardly in a position to disagree.
Well, I mean, it's for defenses need not apply in the Big 12. I mean that's been a staple for generations when dinosaurs ruled and roamed the earth. Defenses are not allowed. It's like the no defense club.
Well, hey, being the student of the game, I'm gonna give you guys a pop quiz real quick, right? And you guys are better with history than I, so I know you'll know the answer. But is it too soon to say that at least the possibility of this defense being as good as the 2017 defense is on the table? Like, we've gotten that game, we've gotten that performance. We can start thinking about that, right?
Well, statistically, the 2017 team defense was only fair at best. If you actually want to go to really good, you got to go to 2014, where statistically they were, I believe, 9th in the country.
I'm not taking it there yet. I know that's another bridge to climb, but can we at least get that first marker? And yeah, to your point, they gave up a lot of big yards and a lot of big plays, but I feel like this group going into this game, they were excellent, nation leading in stops in the red zone. I know that was a little bit blown up, and they're going to leave this game still pretty tough. They're going to leave this game being among the top 20, at least in the nation, in third down conversions prevented defensively. Like, that's powerful stuff, gentlemen. And it may not necessarily be as pretty as low numbers in yards allowed, but that's the kind of ish that wins games.
Here's the problem with comparing to the 2017 team, and it's not a dig on you on this one. but because of the way their schedule played out, they got run into the ground as the season wore on. I mean, Eric and I talked to Trey Neal during our watch along. We talked about this, where the team basically got run to the ground, and they're giving up more and more points. I mean, if you just watch, it was getting worse and worse. And then you had the reset where they got to rest before the bowl game. So I mean, it's a little bit skewed, the 17 team against how good they really are. But from a full unit standpoint, I mean, this team is just absolutely phenomenal. And I think if you took the coaching staff of the current team and you put it with the talent of the 17 team, you're going to have the ultimate defense. No mistake about it. This team is way better coached than Chenander's crew. And I think that makes a material difference.
May I use the word endorsement of one Travis Williams, a.k.a. T. Will?
Oh, absolutely. I think he's fantastic. He's a future.
Could he be the – let me ask you this. Is he the best defensive coordinator UCF's had since Gene Chizik?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, John Skladany had some really good defenses during his time, but I mean, no one has the flash and charisma that T. Will has. Not even close.
And yet, we've seen that in person after the Gasparilla Bowl. Drew, I know what you're referring to there without question.
That's true. I think we just wasted a lot of good art. We got some article ideas out of this. I have a feeling we got some columns you guys could write about this if this defense continues in this track the rest of the year. I'm just saying there could be some content there for both of you there to work on.
I mean, Statboy Drew is a talent as a UCF historian. See, there's moments like these. I wish I had these my glasses on. Yeah, there's a tweet here from Steve Helwick. The Boise State comeback was incredible, but I think this is Gus Malzahn's biggest regular season win at UCF. Feels like it's been a while since the Knights straight up decimated a quality opponent like this. If that's the thought,
to be determined. I mean, I think that's to be
determined. I think the big key is this is a conference game, which makes it more valuable.
Sure.
Correct. To be determined, I think, is a little too safe. I think we can say this, Eric, at this point, and tell me if you disagree. To date, that is accurate.
I mean, this is a big one for him, for sure. I mean, it's hard to compare. I mean, we'll see where SMU goes from here. I mean, they've got, players that might leave, may not. Sure. Who knows? I think Brett Lashley clearly has a lot to learn as a head coach. He got taken to school. All right? You talk about student of the game. I think Gus took him to school in the second half in particular. I think that the master taught the student,
he was doing him a favor.
Yeah. Yeah. But, hey, all positive.
How's that, Drew? Wait, I want to hear that. Who was doing what a favor? I'm curious. No, I'm not arguing. I'm curious what you mean.
Gus did Rhett a favor. He's in his first year. You don't want to develop bad habits. Have the student.
Oh, okay.
Have the teacher, slap the student in the face on this one and say, know your
I believe
role.
the term you're looking for is tough love. Yes, Drew.
You can call it tough love.
Okay. So now I understand what you mean.
But he did school's in session, and Rhett is still learning the craft. He was a coordinator, so he only had to focus on certain things. Now he's focusing on a much bigger picture. And you know what? What better way than to learn, from the guy who raised him in football. And you would not find you can't arguably say that anyone else is a bigger protege of Gus Malzahn than Rhett Lashley.
Mm-hmm. He's in the book, for goodness sake. Yeah, Jeff pointed that out in the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Bing! Well, and let me ask you this, Eric.
You don't get paid for the number of times you mentioned that.
It's a thing. Hush your butt. Maybe it's called being a team player. Maybe you should try, troll. No.
Hey, remember, there's no I in team, but there's certainly a me.
Yeah, well, and you in the comfort of your home. Well, no, I'm kidding, man. No, but listen, the thing I wanted to ask, Eric, is I thought of you when Lashley went for it on fourth down, inside field goal range, still within 10 at this point, I see a shaking of the head no. So I'll pose the question this way: over or under number of objects thrown at the TV by Elo?
I wouldn't say it was objects. It was kind of more like shaking my head. It's like, oh man, like what are we doing, man? Thanks, I guess. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's one of those where like guys that don't normally speak up a lot in the press box. I even heard the random comment of you could have been within the score out there somewhere from
Right.
behind me there.
It was
For
just
some of the big name guys, you know.
Yeah, it was some baffling, just like going for it in his own territory. Like it was just some weird stuff he was doing.
I don't think the book says now's the time. It's like going for 2-point conversions too early. It's going to bite you later.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll put it this way, man. Like, if I hear later that Lashley becomes one of the long list of coaches to blame analytics, I think I might start throwing something. But I'll leave that at that. That's more a topic I bring up on the Student of the Game podcast. But I digress.
Well, I will look for the post game presser because I'm and I'll let you know what he says. And if he brings up analytics, I'll send you the link and you can.
Yeah, because remember, Eric does not sleep.
Boy.
He is more machine than man. He's like Darth Vader.
I don't know about that. It takes its toll there. But you guys do need to sleep. Kyle, tell the audience where you what you're working on here as we're going to wrap this up because well, you guys have regular lives. I don't. So what do you got working on?
Apparently the router's going to sleep. There we go. Yeah, no, apparently the router's going to sleep. Listen, what I'll be working on next is I already said, I want to know on Monday, once Coach Malzahn's had time to review the film and all that, how much he feels like Lashley's familiarity has to do with things. I want to hear about how surprised he was to see Tanner Mordecai start, because I know we were all floored when he took the field. And I had to get one more in, guys, okay? Listen, with all that in mind, I'm really
wondering. That material's extinct now as of this week. That's extinct.
As of this minute, Eric Lopez. Come on now. No, but actually, there's only one other way, and that's if this is a conference championship rematch at the end of the year. Then by that point, it's a throwback. So it's cool again. You know how it works. No, man, but for me, I'm going to be exactly. I'm going to be asking, Coach Malzahn about that and what extra stuff he felt like on film went better this time than any of the other previous games, because he said it multiple times. This is our best game so far.
Very good. All right, that's Kyle Nash from the stadium. We're going to let you go because obviously the internet router is disagreeing with us. So appreciate you coming on as always. We'll talk this week and get set for Temple, that big time matchup with Temple. Drew will get to reunite. Drew will be back with you. Oh, there you go. He left on his own. See that? I knew that was coming. Drew, last thoughts here. We're gonna wrap it up here. Apologies to some that maybe we couldn't get a hold of Mike. We'll get you on in a future show. Right now, just our technical issues stuff. Kind of, we've played this close to the vest a little bit. We'll just leave it as that. So, Drew, what's your final thoughts?
Enjoyed the second half. This is a tale of two halves. First half where things didn't go right, but this is where a good veteran coaching staff that has synergy and trust in each other come into play, and you get a very different result in the second half. In fact, the results were so different. UCF had more yards in the third quarter than the entire first half. And UCF's not a third quarter team. Usually it's the opposite, where they're slow to adjust. Not this time. They were very aggressive. I like this edgier defense that they were playing pass defense really, really aggressively, and I liked it. You know what? Take a couple pass interference calls. Get in their head. This is going to play a big role in the future. When you're going up against a Michael Pratt from Tulane who can throw the ball, you want to be able to have that defense ready to go. I mean, all three aspects of the game by the second half were clicking. They made very good stops. They made plays when they needed to. Special teams was outstanding. There were really no mistakes on special teams. I mean, it was about as close to flawless as you possibly can get. And just don't get complacent. As a fan, there's still work to be done. There's still another game they need The team needs you as a fan doing this stuff. The analysts, the coaches, all of them, they can't be satisfied with this. There are still areas that need work. The offensive line still needs work. I'm not satisfied. So, we'll do it again next time.
And that'll be Temple a week from this Thursday night. We'll have another edition of Night Shift. Drew will be with Kyle at the football game. We'll have coverage. Hopefully our internet will be a little better, more on my end, I think. But in the meantime, check out blackandgoldbanneret.com for a full recap of this UCF win. Drew's going to have his knee-jerk reactions column up before you know it. Depending on when you listen to it, it might be up already. Depends when you listen.
It's not up yet.
Not up yet, but that's always a must-read there. And we'll have much more coverage. We'll be a podcast next week. We'll have a YouTube channel with post-game press conference audio from Gus Malzahn and the winning players. UCF wins 41-19. Thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'll get you more questions. Always keep them coming for next week. We'll do this every week after each game from various locations. For Andrew Gluchov, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift as the Knights victorious over the SMU Mustangs 41-19. Good night and charge on.